Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a while since I've done a live stream, so thank you for your patience. I have, I don't know, I've rejigged a bunch of stuff. Today, I'm going to try it out, and I thank you so much for joining me, trying out a new system. So forgive me if I'm a little rough around the corners here, not so smooth on things, but let me just make sure that I can see comments when they come in. All right, I think everything's working. I think, yeah, looking around, the lights are on. All right, hopefully you can hear me. And if you do me the kindness of letting me know if you can hear me, that would be really great. Whether it's on Substack or on YouTube, I'm just trying this out on those platforms right now. So the topic of today's discussion is a question, and that question is the Trump regime fighting a turf war right now, using the military, using the United States military to essentially fight a turf war, as opposed to fighting a war on drugs? My suspicion is they're fighting a turf war. So let's go over why I say that, and hopefully this will I'll figure out how to get to my next thing here. All right. So my first my first challenge is getting this next slide up. Now, what if I showing you a nice, a very nice blank page there. All right. Fair enough. So I set it up ahead of time, and that didn't work. So I'll just do it on the fly here. How's this? All right. I had that all set up ahead of time, but you know how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. You try something live and things will go wrong. All right. So what I'm trying out right now is my ability to present, a slide deck within a live stream. I hope it works out. I was a teacher for 30 years, and PowerPoint and Google Slides and Keynote, my favorite tool. I had many, but anyway, I digress. So, is the Trump regime fighting a turf war? So this presentation, believe it or not, was inspired by a presentation that Senator Chris Murphy gave yesterday. Now, I've been developing this theory for a long time, and I've already presented kind of the first half of it in a previous video, not a live stream, but a video. And I don't know, perhaps I can put a link up, after this live stream becomes a video, I'll put a link up to that first part of my theory. Essentially, I don't believe the Trump regime when they say they're blowing up drug boats. I don't know. Do you believe it? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Oh, I've got a comment. Look at this. Hey, Kiki Starnova, welcome. I'm happy you found my channel as well. Yeah, hopefully you and I are both sane, Kiki. Hopefully we're both sane. Here's to you, Kiki. Thanks so much for joining in. I'm going to mute this so you don't have to listen to me, drink water. All right, so I've been developing this theory for a while. Kiki says she's starting to lose it. Don't lose it, Kiki. There's much work to be done. And folks like yourself, I've just met you, but I'm assuming folks like yourself who kind of get it. Again, I'm assuming you kind of understand what's going on and you appreciate the gravity of the situation. We can't give up and we can't back down. So what we do have to do is become very methodical and organized and deliberate, not in any kind of violent, take over the world kind of way. But our ideological opponents, they are very organized, they are very determined, and they don't back down from anything. As I've often said, the Republican Party in the United States, I'm Canadian, just to set the record straight. That's why the maple leaf, but nonetheless, in the United States, it's a very different situation than we have here in Canada. But in the United States, I would suggest that the Republican Party approaches politics like it's guerrilla warfare, and the Democrat Party, the Democratic Party, whichever form you prefer to use, they approach politics like it's high school debating club, which is all very civilized and so on. But it's just if both sides don't adhere to the same ethical standards and the same set of rules, then we're not going to get anywhere. So, we have to hunker down and start researching, start planning, start organizing, and figure out the best response to this. Personally, I think it's impeachment, but there are some other approaches as well. Quite frankly, under the Constitution, he shouldn't have even been allowed to run as president for a second time. And Kiki says, I figured you were Canadian. And yes, we are not. We are not playing the same game at all. But I think we have to. And yes, I'm a big supporter of the ETA. And if you look around my channel, you'll see a number of my videos educating people about the findings of the Election Truth Alliance. And even I've had an interview with Nathan Taylor and many other discussions outside of that recorded interview, and I hope to be interviewing him some more. So onward and upward. So I've been developing, thanks, and again, thank you so much for your engagement, Kiki. So as of yesterday, I saw this video by Senator Chris Murphy, and I thought that, this is the final, not the final piece of any big puzzle, but it's it's a piece of evidence that I think gives me a strong enough foundation to present this theory of mine. And is this a theory that I can say I believe this 100%? No, I can't say that. I can say I say that about the rigging of the election, for example. Was the 2024 election rigged? Yeah, 100%. or to put a finer point on it, I calculated the odds recently that, what are the odds that you could come up with the results that we see in North Carolina in terms of the down ballot drop off? Here I go digressing, as I often do. But what are the odds that could happen naturally without some sort of manipulation? And so it's easy enough to calculate. And it's 1 in 1.268 nonillion. And nonillion is a 1 with 30 zeros after it. So forget about 1 in a billion or 1 in a trillion, 1 in 1.268 nonillion. You can see that. That was the last video that I put up on my channel. check it out if you'd like to. So let's take a look here what I woke up to yesterday. Again, hopefully this will work. Oh my gosh. Do I have to like do these things again for every time I want to view them? I kind of thought that I could. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe if I do this. No, yes, no. Add to stage. I'm messing everything up. Okay, how about this? Okay, here's the video, I think.
Pacific. Well, I obviously can't tell you any classified information.
All right.
So I just came from this classified briefing, the first that I have received, that the full Senate has received on the military strikes in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. Well, I obviously can't tell you any classified information I learned. I can tell you this, that the administration had no legal justification for these strikes and had no national security justification for these strikes. Let me just get to the question of the national security justification. What they did admit is that there's no fentanyl coming to the United States from Venezuela. Venezuela is mainly exporting cocaine, but almost all of the cocaine that is coming out of Venezuela into the Caribbean isn't going to the United States, it's going to Europe. And so we are spending billions of your taxpayer dollars to wage a war in the Caribbean to stop cocaine from going from Venezuela to Europe. That is a massive waste of national security resources and of your taxpayer dollars. What we also learned is that there's no legal justification for what is happening right now in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. The president in this briefing, his Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, said that the justification legally is that these cartels are designated by the president as terrorist organizations. Okay, the president does have the ability to designate certain groups as terrorist organizations, but that does not give him the ability or the authorization to carry out military strikes. A designated terrorist organization allows the president to impose sanctions on those organizations and those individuals, or deny passports to the leaders of those organizations. Only Congress, only the American public can authorize war, and there is just no question that these are acts of war that the U.S. military is undertaking. So that's the bottom line, is that this briefing, which by the way was only about 45 minutes long, the shortest classified briefing that I have ever been a part of, they scurried out of there before they could actually get asked any tough questions. The bottom line is that this briefing made it clear that there is no legal justification for what is happening in the Caribbean, and there is absolutely no national security justification.
All right, so there you go. Now, can I get back to my PowerPoint? Okay, good. I can get back to my little PowerPoint or Google Slides. That's what I'm using, in case you're curious. By the way, question for anyone watching. Kiki, you've been very good at engaging. When you look at this print on my shirt, is it backwards? Or does it look normal? Like, can you just read it like normal? From what I can see from my end, it looks normal, but I can't know for sure because I'm not monitoring this on another computer. I can't know for sure what you're seeing. So let me know. All right, so moving along, let me, hard to see. Yeah, I know what you mean. If I had some big print to hold up. How about this? When I hold up this, my little computer, can you see that sticker? And does it say, eat plants, plant trees? A little shout out to the plant-based treaty, of which I am a member. And who knows? Maybe the plant-based treaty will be designated some sort of domestic terror organization. Good. It looks right. I'm on the TV. How nice. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure of that, and because I'm just trying out this platform for the first time. So to reiterate, I'm just going to make this big here so you'll have an easier time seeing this. To reiterate what Senator Chris Murphy was saying there, the Trump administration gave a classified briefing. And from what he said in that video, if you listen carefully, I don't think Donald Trump was there, but I think Marco Rubio was there, and I think Pete Hegseth was there, because he mentioned their titles when he was talking about that briefing that lasted about 45 minutes. And he said that what they learned from, apparently, Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, although, like I said, he didn't mention them by name, but he mentioned their titles. So he said that, well, they disclosed that they understand that there's no fentanyl coming into the United States from Venezuela. And rather, the drug that is being produced in Venezuela is primarily cocaine. And that cocaine is almost, entirely going to Europe. So I'd still like to understand more about the shipping routes. Do these little open to the air boats play a role in traditional narcotics trafficking? I'd like to learn more about that. Just so much to learn, right? And there's so little time to learn it all. But at the end of the day, there's just no national security justification for these boat strikes or for waging any form of war against Venezuela. So, I made this. Oh, there you go. Okay. It's kind of hard to know where the button is. So I will remind you of just, the kind of thing we hear from Donald Trump, and we hear it from Pam Bondi, Carolyn Levitt. Every boat that gets hit. This is literally a quote from Donald Trump. And there's a link on my slideshow, and I'll put a link to my slideshow in the video description, and to a number of other files as well. I've got a number of tables and so on that are related to this presentation. So Donald Trump just said on December 9th in a speech in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania, that every boat that gets hit, we save 25,000 American lives. And when you view it that way, you don't mind. So I believe that even that I don't think would be accurate, but I think that's some sort of calculus that they've come up with based on fentanyl. I don't think a boatload of cocaine, these boats, these kind of smaller craft, could be. I don't think someone could make the argument that that's enough cocaine that it would have killed 25,000 Americans. Certainly, obviously that argument can't be made when these drugs are being shipped to Europe either. But I think all of this calculus that you hear so often is based on this really, very lethal drug, fentanyl. I'm certainly, I'm not encouraging anyone to try any form of narcotics. I've never touched the stuff myself. I have no desire to. I don't understand why anyone ever does. But I understand that fentanyl is really deadly. Just a little speck of it, put into this or that, injected into this or that, it could prove really, fatal. So fentanyl is scary, is a very scary drug. And not to diminish the seriousness of cocaine, but, it's a bit like apples and oranges there. So I think all of this hyperbole that we hear about, every boat strike saves 25,000 Americans. One time, Pam Bondi, I can't remember the number she said, but, it was just outrageous. Like that, it's almost as if they're saying, gosh, if it wasn't for Donald Trump, every single American would have been dead by now, because of all the drugs coming into the United States. So the calculus doesn't add up, but it must be based on fentanyl, not cocaine. All right. So with respect to the legal justification, and this is where I pointed out that it was the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State who seemed to be giving this briefing. And they said that the justification for carrying out these strikes is because Donald Trump has designated the criminal drug cartels in Venezuela to be terrorist organizations. So very, very quickly, I was a law teacher and I just can't seem to keep away from it, even in retirement here. So not that I taught American law, but, live and learn. I'm still alive, so I'm still learning. So under the law, that designation doesn't allow the United States to carry out military strikes. It's really to impose sanctions on the designated organizations, to lock up money, to deny passports to the leaders of the organizations, that kind of thing. It doesn't give anyone authority to just go blow people up, which everybody seems to agree is just out and out murder. These boat strikes, they're just murder. Kiki agrees. Yeah. And this is what's so frightening about, about what I, in my most respectful tone, referred to as the Trump regime. When the government administration of the United States of America becomes a dictatorship, a fascist regime, that's a really frightening thing, because they're just the biggest military on the planet. And they essentially, it seems that they feel they can just go do whatever they want. And they're just saying, well, who's going to stop us? What are you going to do about it? So it's pretty clearly murder. Nobody can do anything about it. Just a little bit more on that. A lot of small print here, so I'll zoom in. So that authority to designate some organization to be a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO, it comes from a law, but it was also reinforced in an executive order after September 11th, 2001, after the attacks on the Twin Towers. And that gave the president, not just Congress, but that's what was special about this executive order. It gave the president the authority to designate individuals and entities as specially designated global terrorists. But like I was saying before, and like Senator Chris Murphy was saying, that just provides a means to disrupt the financial support networks of those organizations by blocking their assets, in the U.S. or in the possession or control of U.S. persons. You might recall that the Trump regime recently designated Antifa to be a domestic terrorist organization. So here's a little note about that. I did a video on that at the time, and again after the fact, I'll put a link up here somewhere to that video. But I'll just reiterate: Antifa actually isn't an organization; it's more of an idea, anti-fascism. So there's every reason to say, when the Americans entered World War II to oppose Hitler's ambitions to take over the world, that, you know, America were the biggest anti-fascists of all. So, but it's important to understand that US law has no legal mechanism to formally label a domestic organization as a terrorist group, and that's largely due to First Amendment concerns. So that designation process is specifically for foreign entities. Nonetheless, it didn't stop the Trump regime. They did. I mean, I checked it out. It's in their list. It's in the list now. Antifa is in the list of you know, domestic terrorist organizations, which under US law is kind of a bit of an oxymoron. Oh, I've got a new message here from Mario. You're very kind. Mario says, thanks for everything you and the ETA are doing from Italy. Mario, thank you for your concern and your support. Really appreciate it. And let me just say, post this message here. Kiki says, didn't Bondi or Krusty claim that girlfriend of the leader of Antifa in, to have a girlfriend of the leader of Antifa in custody? Must have found her at the headquarters. Yeah, you've probably all seen that video recently of, I don't think it's one of the higher ups in the FBI or the CIA. Forgive me. I can't remember, and I can't quite remember the name of the fellow who was questioning him at an oversight committee, on an oversight committee. But yeah, the fellow was being questioned. The fellow said, well, we think Antifa is the biggest, domestic threat to peace and security right now. And so the guy said, oh, well, where are they headquartered? How many members are there? And none of these questions could be answered. So it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of funny. And Kiki says Johnson grilled that guy. Is it Benny Johnson? Is that what Kiki says? Benny and then Johnson. Is it Benny Johnson? I loved him. Hopefully Kiki can confirm that was his name. I loved him. I loved the way he was like, sir, you wouldn't come to this committee making claims like this and not have any evidence to support it. You wouldn't. I know you wouldn't do that, but you did. I love that guy. He was great. So moving along. My general theory is that this is a turf war. It's not a war on drugs. It's a turf war. And again, can I lay out this case and prove it beyond any reasonable doubt? No, not at all. It's in the early stages of theory development, but I will present the general theory and the evidence to support it. But I say here, given the fact that Donald Trump has, let me see if I can get my screen smaller, bigger. No, that's the next slide. Interesting. All right. Again, just learning how to use this, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not sure how to make the screen. No, forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let me finish what I was saying. I just wanted to see if I can get in the picture here, but apparently I can't. So given the fact that Donald Trump has pardoned and released a number of high-level drug dealers, and I will get to that actual number, the literal number for you, ladies and gentlemen, in a moment. He's released a number of high-level drug dealers who were prosecuted, sentenced, and imprisoned in the United States. Given that he tends to have a real soft spot for the drug dealers, an argument could be made that the military strikes occurring in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific are possibly some form of turf war, as opposed to a war on drugs. And here I'm going to, maybe I'll just, can I just put myself up here? What if I remove this? I get, oh, okay. And what if I do this and this, and I add this to the state? Oh yeah, okay. A long and a roundabout way of doing things. Forgive me. And oh, the sound's not working? Sound's not working. Is the sound working now? Right. I know why. It's because I accidentally removed myself. Again, like I said, I mentioned right off the top that I'm using a new system here, and it's it's going to take me a while to get used to it. I think I like it. We'll see. All right, so let me go over a few high-profile cases very, very quickly. This is almost more for entertainment to give you a sense of like the reality, the reality and the irony, whatever, the incredible, the audacity of a guy who's saying I'm going to be tough on crime, and I see drugs as being like basically an attack on our country, and yet Donald Trump releases drug dealer after drug dealer after drug dealer. So here's just a few more high profile cases. So Jonathan Braun, this fellow was released right near the end of Trump's first term. Marijuana was Jonathan Braun's thing. He was sentenced to 10 years. So these are not modest sentences that people are getting out of. And you'll see in the next couple, you'll see some even more severe cases. I misspelled marijuana there. Forgive me. That's not how you spell marijuana. I'm not going to correct it right now, but I'll correct it before I link it to the notes in this video. So now this guy is actually back in jail because he's just he's just got that criminal mind. He can't help himself. He can't control his temper. He can't control his impulses. He's back in jail already, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. Mario says, speaking of Italy, Benito Mussolini, the founder of fascism, in 1924, he cheated and won the popular vote. The 100th anniversary of that would have been 2024. Interesting, Mario. Interesting. No way Musk and Trump didn't know that. That is fascinating. But yes, I do think of Benito Mussolini as the founder of fascism, kind of the poster boy, if you will, of fascism. Yeah, wow. So, very interesting, very interesting. So he's back in jail. Now, here's a big one. Ross Ulbricht, sentenced to life, ladies and gentlemen, in prison for running an underground online marketplace where drug dealers and others conducted more than $200 million in illicit trade using Bitcoin. And we're going to get to that. That's kind of the last third of this theory, this presentation. But the role that crypto plays in all this. So he was in jail for life. He's out now. And that pardon occurred during this term. It was one of the first pardons. You know, shortly after the pardons of like 1500 January 6th insurrectionists who tried to overthrow the United States government. No big deal. Let those guys out immediately. All right, now you've probably heard of this fellow, Juan Orlando Hernandez, very recently freed. This fellow. Now, he wasn't sentenced to life, but it might as well have been life because it was 45 years in jail, another 5 years. You know, once he was released, he would be on parole for 5 years and an $8 million fine for trafficking drugs. Now, this is where I start to build my case for like, is this a turf war? So huge, high level former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, released from United States prison. This guy was a cocaine trafficker, the highest level. Cocaine. Remember when we were just saying a few slides ago that the drugs coming out of Venezuela are cocaine? So you're using the military to attack without any legal justification, allegedly, boats that are carrying cocaine to Europe, not to the United States. And at the same time, you let another high-level cocaine dealer out of prison. And he was locked up tight. He was going to be there for the rest of his life. 45 years. It's a good long time. Now, an interesting thing, when you pardon somebody, any fines they owed, any compensation they owed to victims, it's all erased. So this is a really big deal. This is blatant abuse of the pardon power. Technically, it's called commutation. Yeah, that Kiki asks, how much did he donate? Yeah, so I'm going to get to that's kind of the third part of this theory, and the answer to that is because these donations would invariably be made through the purchase of Trump's meme coin, it can't be tracked. So we can't know. And like you, that is also the part that really pisses me off. So I promised you a number. These are just 3 high-profile cases. And, you know, when I was setting up this table here, I should have included, I guess, the one more column, but that is 40 lines. 40 lines. I did the research and went in to all the commutations of Trump's first term and so far in his second term, and looked for all the people associated with drug offenses. And I came up with 40. There might be more. There's probably more. But for sure, these 40 were related to drugs. 40, ladies and gentlemen. So, you know, in case somebody challenges you and says, well, Trump releases a lot of people. I mean, it's not just drug dealers. It's not just drug dealers, but 40 in total related to drug offenses. I think that makes a sound argument. You know, it provides support for the argument that Donald Trump could care less about drugs, could not possibly care less. So there you go, 40, ladies and gentlemen. So how has Trump monetized the presidency? And this is what Kiki was talking about. How has Trump monetized the presidency? So he's done that through cryptocurrency. So Donald Trump has received, I'll make this, can I make this bigger? See, once I click this button, I can't get back. I'll see if I can remember where it is. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to get that back again. So Donald Trump has received billions in untraceable payment by way of his cryptocurrency in exchange for goodness knows what. We don't know what communication is going on, what deals are being made over texts, over private meetings, phone calls. We don't know. But invariably, people aren't just sending him millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in his cryptocurrency, his Trump meme coin, just for nothing. They're making economic decisions here, and they're saying this is worth it. I'll get back more in return one way or another. So these are invariably related to deals, and they're seeking his cooperation as the president of the United States to support various activities or initiatives, or to oppose other activities and initiatives. That's obvious. That is obvious. But don't just take my word for it. I'm not the only guy who has his opinion. I'll get on to some of the experts here. Just as one case in point, you'll remember that fancy dinner and a White House tour that occurred the next day. This was for the top purchasers of Trump's meme coin. I'm not sure now off the top of my head how many people attended that dinner. I think it was more than 25, but I think the White House tour the next day was for the top 25, meme coin purchasers. And so that was devised, obviously, to spur sales of that Trump coin. And it wound up apparently, reportedly, I can say, raking in about $148 million for Trump and his partners. And much of it courtesy of anonymous and foreign buyers. Right? Anonymous and foreign. And we're talking about, at this point, hundreds of millions and reportedly billions of dollars in Trump coin sales. So immediately made, Trump one of the wealthier people in the world. And what really gets me, I also taught economics, and I rail against cryptocurrency because bottom line, it is worthless. It's as I often say, it's actually less than nothing. It's like a negative. It's a negative value added, because it takes so much energy to produce this nothing. It has no intrinsic value, and there are coins that are pegged to something real, like an actual currency. But a pure cryptocurrency has absolutely no value. It's just purchased, this is the mechanism. You buy it knowing you're getting ripped off in the hopes that you can sell it someday and rip off somebody else for more than you got ripped off. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. Can I do the thing where I see what, minimize? Oh, look at that. Yeah, I was like talking to the camera there, and I realized you couldn't see me. So yeah, that's basically how crypto works. It's just one big con. It's a bunch of people ripping each other off, and they kind of know they're ripping each other off, and they're getting ripped off, and they just hope, well, I know I got ripped off, but allowing myself to get ripped off gives me license to rip off somebody else by even more in the future. And people will often say, well, isn't that the same as any other currency or any other gold, silver? No, it's not. And here's why. Because those other things have intrinsic value. Now, as for a fiat currency, no, it does not have intrinsic value, but it is backed by, I'm sorry, this should be a separate presentation, but it is supported by the GDP of a sovereign nation. So all those things that have value, whether it's bananas, coffee, computer chips, cars, airplanes, satellites, wheat, whatever it is that country produces, you have to buy it using their currency. Now, that might be overstating the point a little bit, but as you know, when these things are designated to be legal tender, what that technically means is if somebody pays you with that currency, you must accept it. And if somebody pays you with that legal tender, that fiat currency, to repay a debt, you must accept it. Under the law, you must accept it. So people can work out deals like in the old days and like they do today. You could pay somebody with money and they have to accept it. Or you could work out a deal and pay them like 10 chickens, or whatever. That's not illegal. You can do that. But fiat currency, why I go down that sidebar there, is fiat currency is backed by goods and services that have intrinsic value by virtue of the fact that it is legal tender issued by a sovereign nation. Cryptocurrency, you could make it. I could make it. You just make it up. Let's come up with a name. And then you pay your money to some crypto exchange or whatever, you get whatever that is they do. And they go, okay, there's a new cryptocurrency. People can buy it if they want. There you go. Name it after you, name it after me. So it's just nonsense. It's like inventing something out of thin air. It has no basis of support. No, it's not related to anything of financial value unless it's pegged to a currency. But why? The currency already existed. Why make up another currency and peg it to the initial currency? That's just nonsense. Anyways, I digress. Stephen Levitsky, when he looked at all this nonsense, this meme coin that Donald Trump is issuing and selling, his take on it was, and this is a quote, "I have never seen such open corruption in any modern government anywhere." That is Stephen Levitsky. He knows what he's talking about. He's a professor of government at Harvard and co-author of these books, How Democracies Die. I think that was the first one. And then the more recent one is Tyranny of the Minority. So all two great books to read if you get the chance. Highly recommend. Now, for those who don't have as much time to read, although I highly recommend it, but I know if you have a tough time finding the time to read, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you, ladies and gentlemen. So here's a video, and it's only 20 minutes or something. And it's produced by a great outfit called A More Perfect Union. And it just came out yesterday or the day before yesterday. Very well done. Nicely explains this crypto racket that Trump and his regime and his partners are running. A few points that they highlight. A billionaire put $75 million into the Trump family crypto company, and then his SEC probe was dropped. What do you think of that? It was dropped. Binance helped them make a crypto coin and facilitated a $2 billion deal. And then the founder of Binance was pardoned. What do you think of that, ladies and gentlemen? And let me see, can I make it bigger? Now, okay, there it is. Because this is small print. And the Trumps are using crypto to enable brazen corruption at the highest level. So I do have a link, and when I make this actual slideshow that will, make it available in the description of this video, that link will be live. So you'll, but you could look this up. I believe the title of it is "We Investigated the Criminals Who Bought Trump. What we found will shock you." I believe that is the official title. You could look for that right now, or you could just look up "A More Perfect Union." And that's a great video. Very nicely done. Now, if you don't believe me, if you just think, this guy is clearly a radical left-wing lunatic, maybe you'll believe Ann Coulter. Let's hear what Ann Coulter has to say.
He's using the presidency to rake in.
Again, why? I don't know. Here we go.
Can't disagree with you. I mean, it's hilarious. I think this is the most corrupt presidency in U.S. history. with the money they are raking in with the NFTs and the meme coin. I mean, it is so blatant. It's right in front of our eyes. And the funny thing about I don't care as long as we get a wall and mass deportations. If I have not made that clear, I don't care about anything but saving the country. We'll deal with, future presidents being corrupt. I mean, it's corrupt in the sense that I should probably modify what I just said. It's corrupt in the sense that he's using the presidency to rake in so much money, which I believe is technically an ethics violation, but he isn't.
Technically. Sounds like an ethics violation to me.
But I think it's better than, for example, not releasing the Epstein files because, in a trade-off with his donors. Okay, give me $100 million and I won't release them. I mean, that hasn't come to light, but I'm just saying that right now he is just, as far as we know, just raking in the money to benefit himself and his family. He is pushing the MAGA policies. And I mean, I thought this, and I think I said it publicly. I think on my Substack with Mickey Kaus, because he asked me, now, if you liked Joe Biden's policies, would you care about this Hunter Biden stuff? And we both agreed that I think most Americans wouldn't care if you liked the policies.
So there you go. Refreshing honesty from Ann Coulter. Let's see, can I make me big now? So now I believe that served as the final slide in my little presentation. So here's me now, nice and big. So there you go. My 3-part theory. And it's just a theory. Although somehow I think in the fullness of time it will pan out to be true. We've got the Trump regime blowing up all these boats in the Caribbean. And of course we heard for a long time people who familiar with these issues. I don't know much about drug dealing, so forgive me. But people who know, they were reporting for weeks and months. They were reporting Venezuela doesn't make fentanyl. What's going on? So now we have the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense or War, Pete Hegseth, apparently saying, yeah, we know there's no fentanyl coming from Venezuela. It's cocaine. And it's going to Europe. So we've got that. They're blowing up these boats. Why? Not for the reasons they say. It's nothing to do with national security, because these drugs aren't even going to the United States, and it's not the really deadly fentanyl. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the significance and the hazards associated with cocaine. Don't recommend it, please. Don't even try. But it's not fentanyl, and yet for months the Trump regime has been claiming, oh, every boat that we strike, we save 25,000 Americans. It's not, the drugs aren't even going to the United States. But here's the critical issue. They know it. The Department of Defense or the Department of War, I'm not sure if it's truly official now that's what they call it, but they know this. And their excuse is, yeah, but Donald Trump designated the Venezuelan drug cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations. So, and then I've gone over, well, the law, even if you designate an organization to be an FTO, a foreign terrorist organization, the law does not allow you to just go blow them up. Not even in the slightest. That's just for, revoking passports and freezing assets and stuff like that. For cutting, it allows them to cut off financial support for those organizations. It does not allow them to just summarily commit extrajudicial executions. So we have that. And then we have, all right, Donald Trump releases drug dealers like crazy. Like he can't seem to do it fast enough. He's released 40 that I can count so far. Why? Well, the final part of this tripartite theory is, well, he's raking in a lot of dough through his meme coin. And a lot of the experts who examine this issue say, yeah, this is largely anonymous, foreign, and likely criminal elements who are bribing the president of the United States with, meme coin purchases, which apparently I believe I've read that he and his family have a 60% share in. I stand to be corrected. I think that's the number. And I'm sure it could change on a daily basis, but something around that. So purchases of these meme coins, and, if you just bear in mind how these coins work, this cryptocurrency works, the more you buy it, the more the value of it goes up. So that 60% stake in that meme coin grows in value every time somebody buys it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my tripartite theory. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. I'm just going to check the comments here, see what I've missed. Kiki says, this regime is something out of a B-rated movie written by a 13-year-old boy. I often think the same thing. And it's funny you say 13-year-old boy. I often say, because I've said this often, middle school, grade 7 or 8. And I think grade 8, you're 13. Yeah, grade 7, grade 8, middle school boy, and specifically boy. Yeah. And Mario says, they gave the Nobel Prize to a Venezuelan woman. I remember, who's trying to make it a democracy, if I'm not mistaken. I think Trump does not want a new democracy country, a new democratic country emerging. Very interesting. That's a very interesting take. Certainly, it would seem to me, Mario, that whether it's democratic or not, the main goal for Donald Trump and the Trump regime and the people behind the scenes who control Donald Trump invariably, what they're concerned about is being able to control a regime in these countries. And of course, if it's democratic, then if a country is truly democratic, then nobody controls it. The people control it. So you raise a really good point. Kiki says, did you hear about Trump's shooter, the DC Guardsman shooter, and the female victims' names were trending before the shootings, like a week or so before, and then again, the early morning hours, the day of. I didn't hear about that specifically, but I've heard a lot about that trend happening time and time again, like with Charlie Kirk, apparently with the Bondi Beach shooting. People doing searches on these things ahead of time. What does it all mean? I have wondered whether that's some sort of glitch in the data reporting. And I'll just give you just one example of why I say that. Because remember with Charlie Kirk, there is apparently a book written about the shooting, released the day before the shooting, or maybe 2 days before. I think it was the day before. You remember that? Probably remember that, huh? So I did a little detective work. I didn't put a lot of time into it, but I went to that site where that book was put up on Amazon, or I think it was Amazon. Yeah, you could buy it apparently on Amazon. And I used that that utility on Google where you can, like, what do they call it? The Wayback Machine, or what, you can see what a website looked like on a given date. And I looked at that website the day before, and it wasn't there. So all we can really see are these screenshots that show a date. And that date was like the day before, forgive me, I don't remember the date, the day before Charlie Kirk's shooting. But you're looking at a picture that's circulating around the internet after the fact. So when I did my little digging around, I couldn't really confirm that that book really was, post the day before the shooting. So I wonder if it's a glitch of some sort. But far be it from me to be someone who's dismissive of data. So I just thought I'd share that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. He wants to be Putin, or in my view, he's being blackmailed by Putin. And of course, in my view, the rigging of the election is probably the main thing that he's being blackmailed for. I don't think he would care about pornographic video or whatever. I just don't think he'd care. I think Donald Trump cares about going to jail. And so if the details of the 2024 election came out, then that could result in, his impeachment, and then inevitably probably a jail sentence. So that's my view. But again, these things, I would put that theory, in my own mind, are the chances above 90%? Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, that's almost a slam dunk. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that that Russia played a role in the 2024 election. And of course, Russia, that's a core competency with Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. But one of their core competencies is rigging elections. That's a core competency for any authoritarian regime, where they election after election, they just keep winning. Oh, 80, 90% of the people love me. And everybody knows, like, they hate that guy. They hate him, and they'd love to be able to vote them out, but there's just no mechanism to allow them to vote them out because the regime controls the election mechanism. And that has happened in America before. Right after World War II, great case in point, Athens County, I believe it, Athens County. Look it up, the Battle of Athens. Take a look at that, the Battle of Athens. And basically, a sheriff and all these deputies controlled this county, but they controlled the judicial system as well. They controlled the courts and the judges. And in that county, that sheriff would just keep getting elected over and over and over again. The judges would get elected, and they just maintain power, and they use that power to exploit everybody. They would just go up to you and go, Yeah, you look drunk to me. I'm charging you with public drunkenness. And then you'd have to pay all these fees to them, because it was crazy. But I won't give away that whole story. Take a look that up. The Battle of Athens in the United States. It occurred shortly after World War II. And Mario says, Russia really likes my country. 3 prime ministers, the late Silvio Berlusconi, Matteo Salvini, and current PM Giorgia Meloni, have connections to Putin. Amazing. Yeah, they just can't leave things alone. So, ladies and gentlemen, as is my custom, I am starting to lose my voice. So, thank you so much for joining me. This video will be posted after the fact, and it will include a bibliography to the sources that I used to, produce support, I should say, my theory on this matter. And every day, every week, every month, I'm sure we'll just provide more evidence that will either support my theory or challenge it. We'll see. Time will tell. Kiki says, thanks so much. And I love your country. Damola is the last name, but that might have been been written to Mario, I think. But hey, you're very welcome, Kiki. And Mario and Kiki, thank you so much for your engagement. I'm going to sign off for now, and I will see you in the next one.